So today on the Ministry of Car, 10 reasons why I prefer a 7 Series to a 5 Series. Alright folks, let's just get started. We're going to go on a drive today, but we're going to talk about something pretty interesting because it's something that I do see discussed on the internet.
Seems to have no limit to it.
By the way, nice Alpina dials. If you did notice, I just coded these in. We'll talk about that perhaps in a future video, but some interesting things you can do if you own a BMW, a modern BMW. Alright, so this video is going to consist of two parts. Part number one, I talk about the 10 things that really separate a 7 Series from a 5 Series. And part 2 will be essentially a month 2 update on this car. Because, I'm just about hitting 2 months of ownership. So I'm sure a lot of you are interested to know more about my ownership so far. Alright, the way to summarize what separates a 7 Series from a 5 Series is the difference between premium economy and business class. It's a rough analogy, a crude analogy, but it's a good one. And I want to talk about 10 things that really bring that difference to mind. Difference number one, and it really is the biggest difference because you notice it the moment you step into the car, is the interior. Interior, not so much quality, but interior trimmings. The 5 Series is a great car. It's very luxurious, especially the newer 5 Series like the G13. But nothing quite prepares you for how indulgent a 7 Series feels. Now, you can't really tell in photographs because in photographs, all colors look the same. You can't really tell textures, but things like the entire dashboard being leather wrapped, things like all the buttons being made of metal rather than plastic, just everything, the feeling of luxury, particularly with this generation, because I did not feel this difference between the F10 and the F01 7 Series. But on this generation, even though it has been criticized for being very similar, and some parts of it are because the dials are very similar, the iDrive is very similar, but the rest of it is just it's a level above. So that's one thing. And the interesting thing that's been happening is one of my life's aspirations has been to own a Bentley. Always wanted a Bentley, just like I always wanted an M5. And particularly not even that old, like 10, 12, 13-year-old Continental GTs or Flying Spurs, which are like Mark II, not the newer one which came in 2018, but some of them in the Mark II. They are getting to interesting price points. And I have been doing a little bit of Bentley shopping, and the problem is every time I climb into a Continental Mark II or Flying Spur or even the convertible, when they're all the same, then I step back into this car, I can't help but feel that those cars, yes, they have amazing quilted design on the leather and it all looks very fancy in the photographs, but in real terms, in terms of what I use and touch, this just feels better. So this kind of spoilt my Bentley dream a little bit, because this car itself is so nice that even though I still want a Bentley, it's just one of those things, it's not entirely rational. But this car has kind of spoiled it for me, because the interiors on the Mark 1 and Mark 2 before they completely replaced the Continental GT after 13 years, the interior on this is better. So that's difference number one. Difference number two is ride quality. Now, there is something to know. No non-air sprung car, a normal steel spring sprung car, sounds like a tongue twister. No steel spring sprung car can ride as well as a car with air springs. And the 7 Series has air springs, or rather air suspensions. Air springs is a little bit of a misnomer. And the thing is, this is a car where you can have your cake and eat it too, because one, you can have extremely large wheels if you like the look of them. I'm not a large wheel guy, but I do like the edges of what, say, OEM look like. This car has the highest size that came OEM on this car, 21 inch. This is also the same size that you get on an Alpina B7. So this car is kind of designed to go with 21 inch the limit. Even with 21 inches, the way this car rides is immaculate. It rides way better than my 520D with 18-inch wheels, and definitely compared to the 540i with 20-inch wheels that I had earlier. This is in a different league. And compared to my M5, let's not even talk about it. So even though the M5 ran on 20-inch wheels, smaller than this car, so the air suspension gives such a polish to the ride that it's just, once you get used to it, it's a little bit, it's going back to the business versus premium economy analogy. Once you get used to it, you're like, why am I compromising on it? And this is not to say that this gives you a floaty ride like a Rolls Royce that feels completely disconnected from the road and it completely destroys handling involvement. It doesn't. We'll get into that point in a second. But just the ride quality itself makes a massive difference. So that's the second big difference if I compare this versus, say, my 540i that I used to own earlier. Difference number 3, and this is very particular to the country that I am in, because this is an option that has been ticked in these cars in the 7 Series, but not in the 5 Series. And chances are, even if you're looking in most countries, it'll be very rare to find a 5 Series ticked with this option. And that is active steering 4-wheel steer. And this is, I would say, along with the ride quality and the interior quality, this is the third primary reason why I switched from a 540i to a 740i. Or technically, I switched from a M5 to a 740i. The timeline is a little bit weird there because I sold the 540i and the 740i on the same day, became carless for a while, and then basically got my wife a 520D, got myself this. This has active steer, which means that the steering is incredibly sharp. This has one of the sharpest, particularly in short wheelbase form, this has one of the sharpest steerings that I have ever felt in any car. I'm trying to think of a car that's analogously as fast to steer, and I can't think of anything really. And that makes this car feel small, it makes the car feel light, it makes the car feel agile. You would not believe that you're driving a 7 Series. And I want to give you an analogy, not an analogy, I want to give you a story. Because like any petrol head, and for me in particular who changes cars as often as I do, along with my Bentley dream, I've also been trying to explore my Porsche dream, because my analysis of my current car situation is that I have two perfect sedans in their own way, the 740i and the 520d. I want to sell one of them, ideally the 520d, not the 740i, though I have both up on sale, and I want to get a sports car. I ideally want to keep this car, but my wife is kind of in love with the 520d, mainly in love with the fuel economy. That's a different story. So along with Bentleys, I've also been looking at Porsches, particularly Porsche Boxsters, because there is a very good line of thinking that says that a Porsche Boxster is the answer to most questions, more than the 911, right? Mid-engine and all of that. So I went to check out a Porsche Boxster. And the interesting thing that I realized when I drove the Porsche Boxster, of course it has hydraulic steering, it's an older car, it's a 987. That Boxster felt more difficult to drive than this. Heavier steering, much longer steering lock ratios, because this is like less than 1.5 what is it called, lock to lock, 1.5 turns or something. Porsche is definitely more. And it just struck me that it is a bit ridiculous. I would think that stepping from a 7 Series into a Boxster, the Boxster would feel like a toy. But actually this feels very, very light and easy to drive. Also, I'm used to this car. Don't obviously account for that, but nonetheless, just ridiculous. So yeah, the 4-wheel steer leading to this extremely sharp steering ratio and incredible feeling of agility is a big factor. So that's point number 3. Point number 4, what really separates a 7 from a 5? It has to be the sound insulation in the cabin. The sound insulation in the cabin in the 5 is good, but on the 7, it's at a different level. It's at an S-Class level, because this is an S-Class rival. It's almost at a Rolls-Royce level, so to speak. In fact, you could think of the 7 Series as a Rolls-Royce Light, given that they are made from the same company. In fact, you can even code in Rolls-Royce stuff on the dials and stuff if you want, but I'm not going to do that. I just put these Alpina dials because I love Alpina. I miss my Alpina, so I like having the blue color in front of me. So yeah, the sound insulation has a few great advantages beyond disadvantages, which we can talk about. Advantages number 1 of the sound insulation is your stereo system is amazing because you have less external sound interfering. It's very relaxing, even if you're in heavy traffic like I'm right now. It's very relaxing. You can't hear all the noise going on the road, roadworks, whatever might be going on. I suspect in a quiet country like Singapore, it's less important, but in a noisy country like, for example, India, I can imagine having something like this would just be amazing. I won't have to listen to all the honking and all of that. I mean, I can still hear it, but it's very muted, a bit like having noise cancelling. So yeah, that's one big difference versus the 5 Series. Difference number 5, and this is not that apparent in this particular car, the short wheelbase, though you can still feel it. It's interior space. And the difference with the interior space of the 7 Series, you may think of it as legroom, but it really isn't. The thing is, the 7 Series is a much taller and a much more vertical car than the 5 Series. You will see it. It's not an SUV height. It's kind of a beautiful in-between. Whereas, say, something like a 5 or a 3 especially is very low, which is good, great for being very sporty. But when it comes to passenger space, you always are compromised. You'll get into a minivan or a SUV and you'll like, yeah, I can see the point of getting an SUV, and that makes you get into these very heavy, very unfun to drive cars. The 7 Series is a average height saloon. It's a bit like the 6 Series Gran Turismo, which is based on the same platform, which means that it's actually you're not sitting low to the ground, you're sitting just right. And especially on the rear seats, you'll see the difference. You're not crouching down, you're literally sitting, just go in straight and sit. So it's got an incredible ingress, egress, and right height so that you have sufficient, your legs don't have to go up, right? Because if the seat base is too low, your knees have to go up to compensate. Here, the knees stay straight. So that is one big difference. Interior space, or rather interior height. And particularly on the long wheelbase, the legroom is ridiculous. Even on the short wheelbase, you could say the knee room is analogous to the 5 Series, but because of the extra height, the legroom is more. So those are 5 things that I think are the 5 biggest differences that really make this feel different from a 5. Now, that begs me the next question. What are 5 other things that I want you to know about this car before you consider this, or you compare this versus the 5 Series or any other car for that matter? What else do you need to know about this car? The big thing to know is, and you get a sense of it here as I accelerate out after taking a U-turn, is that there is no compromise in performance versus the smaller car. When I say performance, I mean straight line speed. Now, you would typically think that a 5 Series would feel much faster, and there's an argument to say that the 5 feels faster because it has less sound insulation. But the weight difference between this and the 5 Series, particularly the short wheelbase versus the 5 Series, isn't as much as you might think. It's about 150 kilos. It's like having 2 passengers. So you never feel that, even in the smallest engine on this car, which is a 2-liter engine. Some may say, why do you have a 2-liter engine in a large 7 Series? In fact, the whole impression is that of a 7 Series being a very, very large car needing a very large engine. This car weighing in at about 1700 kilos, which is similar to a M340i, M440i, M2 in the modern era. The engines go a long way. A 3-liter engine in this particular car, which officially develops 340 horsepower, but with the mild stage 1 tune as I have in my car, developing 400 something horsepower and about 600 newton meters of torque, even a 3-liter is just more power than you can need, and definitely more power than you need in Singapore. This particular car, officially, as tested by Car and Driver in a long wheelbase, Car and Driver USA in a long wheelbase form, it did 4.8 seconds to 60 miles per hour in the US in a long wheelbase, non-stage 1. This car is short wheelbase, so it's about 100 kilos lighter than what Car and Driver tested, and it's got a stage 1. I would estimate this car just a plain and simple 740i, the most common spec that you can find in Singapore other than the short wheelbase, with a $1,000 stage 1 tune on it. This is a 4.5 second to 100 kilometers per hour car, easily, which is bonkers because that is about as fast as, say, when you were living in the early 2000s and you saw those things like a Lamborghini Murcielago or a Ferrari 360, or maybe even the Gallardo. Gallardo may be a little bit faster. It is a bit ridiculous to think that this not very high end, because it is not the highest spec you can get on this car. You can get a 750 as well, you can get an Alpina as well. This middle of the range 7 Series is as fast in the straight line as those cars. It is just ridiculous to imagine. And it's to do with basically the lightweight. The lightweight of this car, because of the carbon core chassis and everything, is amazing. And talking about the lightweight, there are two more points, point 8 and point number 9, if I'm still keeping count correctly, which really are incredible in this car. And I would say not a differentiator versus the 5 Series, but it keeps you in the same page. Fuel economy. Now, right now, I recently reset the car's overall fuel economy, because I reset the dials with the coding and everything. And I've had a moderate, I would say 60-40 mix, 60% city, 40% highway. And I'm doing 8.5 kilometers to the liter. That is identical to what I used to get on my 1.4 Scirocco, the first car I ever had. Of course, I was 15 years younger. Was I driving faster? Maybe a little bit, but honestly, it's more about the power difference between a 160 horsepower Scirocco and a 400 horsepower 7 Series. I'm probably doing the same speeds, but probably, I need to press the accelerator less on this car. So for a 3-liter 400 horsepower 7 Series to give you something like 8.5 kilometers per liter in a real world combined cycle with air conditioning on and for a petrol head, right? I'm not a monk with my right foot, is ridiculous. And it is analogous to what I used to get on my 540i. And in fact, if you see the test that I did for the 520D, where I compared the fuel economy with 520D, the 520D is in a different league, but even this car is very impressive in terms of the kind of fuel economy that you can get. I would dare say that the kind of fuel economy you get on this is what you would get on a typical, say, a Honda Accord or a Toyota Camry, a non-hybrid one, right? Like a typical Japanese 2-liter car, not naturally aspirated. This car probably gives you the same fuel economy. And it's to do with the weight, it's to do also with that incredible B58 engine. This engine is really something else, because this engine gives you torque, this gives you power, and it gives you incredible fuel economy. Linked to the lightweight, point number 9, it is handling. Now, I talked about steering earlier, but steering, if you can't solve the handling of a poor handling car just by making the steering rack faster. But this car, because it's light, because it has constantly adaptive air suspension, which means it's constantly adjusting the dampers to make sure that it's suiting the road, suiting the characteristics, suiting the situation. There's an adaptive mode, but even generally it is constantly adjusting. Adaptive mode basically just means that it is going to scan the road ahead and make further fine-tune adjustments, whereas a normal mode, or rather sport mode and comfort mode, just means it's changing every millisecond for comfort or for sport. Regardless, the end outcome is that this car handles. You have full confidence to throw this car around. I would say I have more confidence to throw this car around than the M5, because the torque on this car is a lot more predictable and a lot more, not to say linear, but because of the 8-speed ZF gearbox and how smart it is, and the fact that the absolute amount of torque is not crazy on this car, unlike the M5. The M5, I don't feel confident just throwing it into the corner and putting in a little bit of throttle, because the M5 is the kind of car you need a lot of space in case things go wrong. In this car, even in small, you're just turning in, you can just put a little bit of throttle and you can feel the back end pushing you. This is completely safe. You're not doing anything sketchy at all, yet you're feeling the rear wheel drive of the car and it feels agile and light in your hands. I love this. And to have this kind of adjustability in a car is amazing. This is something you don't get in an Audi, you don't get in a GTI, for example. You don't get in any front wheel drive car, you don't get in quattro cars. You only get this in rear wheel drive car. So it's great, but to have that in a big luxury car like the 7 Series, this is what I talk about, having your cake and eating it too, right? It is just really one of the best things about this car, the handling. It really is. And I prefer the handling of this car to the M5, at least in the city and in the expressway. I bet if I go to Malaysia and the kind of things that people do in Malaysia, and for those things probably the M5 would destroy this car, but for my use case, it's incredible. And the last thing that I wanted to know about this, and it really separates it from a 5 Series, is very simply it's a 7, which means that it is not seen by anybody as a particularly sporty car. So the insurance on this is very low. Like I pay $1,000 insurance, which in Singapore is like really low because I have 50% NCD as well. But just to give you a contrast with my situation, I was paying $2,500 on an M5 per year, and this is $1,000, less than what 30-40% of what I paid on an M5. Even though the accessible performance is similar, and also people don't. With the M5, I love the car, but I always felt that because I was in an M5, and not that I am too concerned about what other road users think, but there is always, when you're in a car like an M5, people know what it is, and there's always an expectation. It could just be normal hot hats lining up next to you, because everybody wants, when they see an M5, they want to test themselves versus an M5. Right? You pull up anywhere in an M5, people, it's a good thing. Maybe people like this, supercar drivers like this. In Singapore, M5 is a bit of a supercar. But this car is just invisible. I love that. Nobody knows that this is truly a Q car. This is truly one of those, the Alpina philosophy. Maybe what I really like about this car is really very much like an Alpina. Sadly, Alpina doesn't come in a short wheelbase in this model. It only comes in a long wheelbase. And the taxation in Singapore means that it's incredibly expensive. But if I think about the principles of what make an Alpina, the discreetness, incredible ride quality, yet good handling. What was the third thing I was going to say? Everyday usability. This car really kind of brings it to life. And probably that's why I like it so much. It really kind of does what I expect from a Alpina, which is that it's still amazing for the enthusiastic driver, yet it's not designed for the track. It doesn't attract unnecessary attention. It really is a very nice thing. So conveniently, we are just stepping back into my home now. So let's maybe park outside for a couple of seconds, and I'll just run you through how my 2 months of ownership. Alrighty, folks, let's talk about the 2 months of ownership. Few things to know. I got some work done to the car initially. When I got the car, it was at about 90,000 kilometers, roughly thereabouts. I am at or maybe it was 90,000 something, 90,500, 700. Anyways, I'm at 93,500 now. So I've done about 2,500 kilometers, maybe 3, somewhere in between. Because I really like this car. I've just been driving it, even though I don't need to drive it. But I've kind of been finding excuses to keep driving all the time. Any problems with this car? None. Zero. Basically, I took care of everything that needed to get taken care of in the beginning, and I got a stage 1 done. Small things, a filter here, some parts there. Mainly the only major thing, not major, but only notable thing was that the driver's side mirror needed repairing, the motor, because it wasn't folding properly. And the car it's only been 2 months, but it's been utterly reliable. What have I done to it other than the stage 1 tune? Well, I have coded it. You can see these are basically Alpina dials. They're blue, or they can go from, okay, I just switched on the car accidentally, or they can go to basically blue and green. So that's very cool. That's the main reason I got the coding done. The other interesting thing that I've done, I'll make a separate video on this, is that I have basically connected the OBD port, which is how you do the coding using Bimmer Code, or is it Bimmer Work? One of the two, can't remember the name of the app right now. And I have also activated active sound design, which is meant for a BMW M3. So all of these cars come with active sound design. And one of the things with the, let me turn the camera back, the 7 Series is that it's so quiet that, you can't really hear the engine too much. So that's always been a problem. And there are no options for a very loud exhaust on this car, and nor do I want to become a social nuisance. So I realized that, BMW is pumping sound into the cabin. So why don't I get them to pump a little bit more sound, assuming that tuning this car for how they would tune a M3. And in the active sound design, inside Bimmer code, inside by connecting the car, I found options to go from everything from a G11, G12, G15, which is 8 series coupe, F30, which is 3 series, all the way to F80 to M3. So this car is currently pumping in M3 levels of sound. Does it make a difference? Well, the car sounds a lot bassier. The thing with BMW active sound design is that you can't really tell what part is the engine, what part is the sound design. It's kind of designed that way, which is a good thing. The car sounds a lot bassier. The engine is a bit more present, which I really like. So that's the main change that I've done, and I really like that change. Other than that, nothing much else to report. Car has been doing its job, and yeah. All right, I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next time.